it's hard. But if all you know, if what you know, all I know is that like I can attempt anything as long as I'm willing to just get back up when I fail. Because I've failed so many times.
What is up, you guys? Welcome back to the #1 mental health and addiction podcast, the Hopeaholics. I am your girl, Natalie Eva Marie, and these are my boys.
I'm Chad.
Hi, I'm Shane.
Make sure you guys like, subscribe, and follow us on our socials and wherever you get your podcasts.
Got a new episode dropping every Monday and Thursday. Please come check it out.
This episode is brought to you by the Infinity Group. You guys, if you or a loved one is suffering, please call us today. The number is right here on the screen. We are here for you 24/7. Now, let's get into the episode.
Michael, welcome to the Hopeaholics Podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Yes. Unfortunately, you're probably, your cortisol level has spiked considering you came from Los Angeles.
I think my cortisol is definitely at it's like at a nice high place, you know.
I mean, was the traffic bad?
Oh yeah.
The traffic was miserable getting out of LA, and then as soon as I got some like roadway, I was doing like 98.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is
I mean, that's the thing. You can either drive really fast on our freeways around here, or you're in stop and go.
Yeah, totally.
And the stop and go never makes any sense.
Well, I was actually pretty surprised that like I was doing like 80, and I was like, cars were like, and I'm like, fuck this. I'm going for it, you know? And I just like put it down, and it was pretty awesome the whole way.
That's how we drive out here. I was in she lives in Texas, but my son's at Baylor in Texas, and when you fly into Dallas, it's a pretty far drive to Waco. Mm-hmm. You know, it's a solid hour 45.
Yeah.
And I always get like, you know, just like a 6-banger car. But man, people drive crazy in Texas. Like people, there's like regular drivers that just drive regular speed, and they're always kind of like scattered, right? But then there's everybody else that drives crazy, and they're just like boom, 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 and it's like swerving in and out. So I'm like driving like the people that drive crazy because that's just how I would rather drive than drive slow. And I'm in like some rental car that's got like, I always feel like I'm in a golf cart because I drive like a Denali.
Totally.
A Tahoe.
Yeah, I moved out of New York City in the beginning of the pandemic. And
Smart.
In like 2012, I bought a sick property 2.5 hours north of New York City.
Oh, okay.
Like big piece of land. And we would use it on the weekends. And in 2012, there was nobody from New York City up there. I was just like, Donna, like, to my wife, let's get a spot that's like just rural, super out of the way, because she basically shook me one day, and I was building my restaurant sort of world, and she was like, I love you a lot, and I was like, I love you too, and she was like, I'm just gonna let you know that this shit is not sustainable. Like, it is just not sustainable. The amount she was like, I don't even know you, and I was like, are you saying like you're like thinking about? And she's like, no, but I'm just telling you that like, this is not sustainable. We can't build a long-term relationship if this is what it's going to be, because I'm alone all the time. And I was like, you're fucking right. And we need to get me out of New York City. Like, because I'm such an alcoholic and an addict. And like at that point in my life, I was just building my first business. And so I just dove deep into business hard. You know, I had no idea what I was doing. And I just thought like, okay, I don't know what I'm doing. So as long as I'm there all the time, I'll figure it out. Or it'll at least look like I know what I'm doing, you know?
Right.
And it was just the wrong approach. But I do think kind of like the approach a lot of young entrepreneurs take, where it's just like you don't understand how to be efficient with your time.
Oh, sure.
You know, so you just like, you're there all day, all night.
Sure.
Like, just in it, you know? And so we bought this house upstate, and it was like an absolute game changer for our relationship. But when the pandemic hit, we decided that we were just going to pack up Brooklyn and just go move up there. And I never thought, you know, that I would be like a country bumpkin. I just didn't know I had it in me, you know?
Yeah.
But I was very wrong. Like, I love it there. I love it there, and I would never move back down to New York City unless, maybe in my 60s,
Sure.
But it's very slow paced, man. Nobody's driving fast. It's just like 55 on the Taconic, and like if you're going 60, like you run a good chance of getting pulled over.
Oh yeah. That's kind of like Jonathan and myself. We live in Texas, and it's the same thing. There's like a road to get to our place, and 55 is like the speed limit, and if you're going above that, you're for sure you're asking to get pulled over 100%. And once you turn off of that, it's you're in kind of rural roads, and it's country life.
Yeah, country. I mean, I just didn't think that it was me. I didn't, but I it's so interesting that you can acclimate pretty quickly.
Oh, sure.
Especially, I think having a family is like made it a lot easier for me to quickly acclimate.
Mm-hmm.
But now, like, I'm hooked on hunting and all sorts of shit that I just didn't know was in me.
Yeah.
I've never been hunting, but she hunts.
I love hunting.
Mm-hmm. I do too.
Hunting season opens in a week, and I'm just like, I got like 7 cams on my property. I got my buck. Like, I know where that motherfucker is.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
We got 2 this season. So I wouldn't really call myself like a hunter because it's only been my 3rd season. But I love it. I love it for many aspects. One, obviously, that's like the cleanest meat you could possibly get.
The best.
I know where it is coming from. But all the other things that go into it, from you're really like out in nature, and it's the time where you really even if I wanted to have my phone, I have my phone to take photos of like wherever I'm at, but there's no service. So you have to really be locked in and present, and then really enjoy all of the things that you're actually experiencing and seeing. And then obviously the camaraderie of your camp and things of that nature of who you're out there
Totally
hunting with.
Next year you're not allowed to go without a Starlink, though. I'm sorry.
For real.
I'm
for
telling
real.
you, like
Game changer.
Yep.
I had no idea what I was doing, but I knew I had a lot of deer on my property, and I knew a lot
Yeah,
of guys in my
sure.
area were hunters.
Yeah.
And I was just like, that's it. I'm buying the gear. I'm getting the gun. I'm practicing. And then I just, like, what I can't wait for is, I wake up at 4:30 in the morning every single day of hunting season, and I get dressed super quiet so I don't wake anybody up. And then I just walk out into the woods, and I've got a spot. I've got 2 spots, but I got one main spot that's just like, there's like a bunch of down trees that I kind of just fit right in there.
Oh, sure.
And I just sit in quiet. It's crazy. It's like the only time where I feel like my brain really is like stimulated enough by what I'm doing to shut it down and not like obsess about the phone or
What's the rules in that part of New York and hunting, and what's the length, and how much are you allowed to kill?
Well, typically you get a tag for a buck and a doe and a bear.
And a bear?
And a bear. So you typically, I have no interest in killing a bear. I'm just not there yet. Who knows? Maybe down the road. I know a lot of hunters that, do. But you get a buck, and then if you apply for this kind of lottery thing, they give you a doe. And there's no real size, like regulation. But like if you see a Bambi, it doesn't make sense to shoot that,
Yeah.
So I'm always, I let a lot of deer go because I just know that, I'm doing it for the meat. I mean, I'm doing it for the hunt because I love the hunt.
For sure.
Last season, when I shot my buck, I went back to the house and I said to my wife, don't say anything. I'm doing this. And I grabbed my 2 boys and I brought them out with me. Nice. And I dressed the deer with them.
Oh, wow.
And they sat and watched in awe,
Yep.
I took the heart out and I like put it in my son's hands, and I was like, let's pray over this animal because this animal is going to feed us for the next 4 months, And it was just like a moment where I was like, wow, this is real. This is like, it's pretty awesome.
It is. It's definitely something where I do feel that regardless of if you want to get into hunting or not, it's an experience I think that everybody should, especially if you eat meat, should experience at least one time, because it does It is a weird.
Sacred. There's like a sacred component to it.
It is.
I feel like if you eat meat, and I haven't gone hunting. I'm totally down to do it, but if you you can't really say anything bad about hunting if you eat meat.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a meat eater,
I agree. If you're going to the grocery store
and you're buying yourself
meat,
some cow, some ground beef.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You go to a restaurant, you have some tacos.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
steak.
Yeah.
No one's really giving me any shit for hunting. I mean, I've posted a couple of things on social, and there's going to be some haters out there.
She gets a little bit.
Yeah, there's going to be haters, but at the end of the day, it's like, look, I eat this meat.
Yeah.
For
This
sure.
meat is like, I'm doing it definitely.
Do you ever?
I love it.
Do you ever cook it though? On like, so post your kill, post your cook.
Mm-hmm.
Have you done that? Do you do that?
Like show like what it. What,
Yeah, like
what a-
maybe
what
you made a
venison meal.
steak or yeah.
Oh hell yeah! I mean, I'm like a trained chef. So
Yeah.
Exactly. I was just gonna like
yeah,
get
I've-
into.
all day, and people are like, for whatever reason, people are scared of venison. The craziest thing about that is venison is like, in my opinion, it is the best tasting. It's lean as hell,
Mm-hmm.
but it has this like sweetness component to it that when you get a good sear on a piece of venison, or you make a venison burger, and you take a venison burger next to a beef burger,
Yeah.
or a bison burger,
Yeah.
there's just no comparison.
Yeah.
It is so good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It is so good. And I just love the process. I love the process of it. I think at heart, like, I'm really a hunter. Like, I think hunting in general, just like I'm a hunter of life. I feel
Yeah.
like curiosity has been just like a big component to like the things that I've done over the years. And so when I decided to take it upon myself to teach myself how to hunt,
Which
I
is
was like-
wild, by the way.
I was like, this is
yeah.
it.
What'd you do? YouTube it?
I did.
Yeah.
I YouTubed everything.
Smart.
All of it.
Yeah.
Everything. From the gear that I got,
Yep.
from the gun that I bought, the whole thing, dude.
Yeah.
Everything. How to dress it. I still when I'm dressing the deer, I'm got the YouTube. I'm like,
Yeah.
let me just make sure I'm not gonna nick this thing. and,
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, because you could fuck it up.
Oh
huh?
yeah.
Yeah, like if you nick the innards, like as you're coming up the torso,
Yeah.
there's a good chance that you spoil the meat, so you don't want to do that.
You don't want to do that.
And the craziest thing is like, when you dress a deer and you shoot the deer in the right place, which is basically like right under the shoulder blade,
Yeah.
kind of where you want to enter.
Yeah.
When you dress the deer, there is no blood if you do it right. Like there'll be blood in the
Sure.
cavity from the wound, but like you don't get like blood everywhere.
Right,
It's
right.
like clean
Yeah.
and
It's that's why I'm saying it's like an experience that everyone should have, because it is totally not what you would think that it would be.
Totally.
Just because from all aspects, from the gear to the pack out to the dressing to the experience, from like a spiritual to all of the above, and then to be able to harvest it and then have your freezer full and then be able to prepare it and nourish your body with like the meat that you like literally physically went and got is just wild.
totally.
What do you kill with?
I use a rifle. Yeah.
Which
I bought a new rifle last year, and it's called a Tactica.
Okay.
It's I'm spacing the name of the actual model,
Mm-hmm.
but it was highly recommended. I was shooting a Remington 308,
okay.
and so now the new gun that I have is I think it's a 280. And it's just a powerful, unbelievably precise gun in
Yeah.
comparison to the Remington that I had. The Remington was like, my wife actually bought me that gun.
Okay.
And it's a beautiful gun, but this thing is just like, it's a totally different experience. Like when I sight that gun in, I have to make very few adjustments. It's just so.
Which is another component of hunting too, is like your sights. Like, yes, you can buy your gun, but then if you don't have your optic that has the sight to see what you're shooting, good luck. Good luck. But that was another learning like curve that my husband and I, had the process of going through. I think I shot my first elk with a 300 Win Mag Bagara. And then I went, second season, I used the 6.5 PRC from Christensen Arms. And then this season, I did Christensen Arms 300 Win Mag. 300 Win Mag is definitely a nice, powerful round that I feel is... And the Christensen is pretty sick. It's just... And it's so light because all those things are huge components when you're out hiking and putting in some miles.
Totally.
I'm carrying that rifle. So if it's really heavy and your pack and all the things, it does make a big significant difference from your pack out to just the physicality that is required to
my new
handle.
gun is also like insanely light. It is insanely light. It's
Yeah.
weird. It's
Yeah,
weird how
right.
light it is because when I put it up to my shoulder, I'm like, oh my gosh, this thing is super duper light. You know?
And then if you add a suppressor component to it, money. Like the suppressor we used this year was from Alley Cat, so shout out to them because that thing, not only is it light, but I didn't even shoot with ears on, like nothing.
We will now take a commercial break for Christensen Arms and
Yeah, I know, right?
what was it? Alley Cat?
Alley Cat
And
with
Al-
suppressor. It's sick. I
went in
know. For
on it.
real.
We
I
just
know.
went
Sorry.
in. No.
It's exciting. It's like fun.
She literally
I
is
love it.
sponsored by
Like,
Christensen Arms,
yeah.
though, so like
That's true. But
it's doing a commercial break for
it's fun because you I think people have a misconception of one. It's not like you have social media where you're just posting like the animal and it's like, oh my gosh, a trophy. Where it's really not about that. It's like so much more that is required for you to even get that animal, and you can only have one tag. So like, and also too, if you have your one tag and say that I wound the animal, I'm done. I don't get to go shoot whatever I see. It's like, if you don't make that kill on that specific animal, then you're not harvesting that season. And you go home
I'm dying
empty.
to go elk hunting. That is a dream. It's a dream of mine. I haven't gone elk hunting, and I just know that that's a totally different beast.
Oh,
You know, like
it's
I'm
wild.
dying to do it.
It's
really.
it's the next one I think on the list is to do one with a bow. That's another animal because you're how close you are to these like majestical creatures, because they are, once you're like looking at them and your binos and everything, is nuts.
Do you shoot bow now?
I learned from Cam Haynes, so shout out to him, and Wayne from the Bow Rack, savages, and been hunting forever. So I think I learned from like
The best.
top, so that way I wouldn't make you don't learn any bad habits.
Mm-hmm.
However, I have not practiced nearly enough to feel confident or comfortable enough to go try a bow, because you're so close to the animal that I'm like tripping. Like, I'm not doing it until I feel super dialed, and because you're 20 yards, like, and then your adrenaline in your heart and like all the things that actually come about when you're about to make, take the shot or with the bow. So not remotely there yet,
Yeah,
but I have a bow.
I just bought a Hoyt bow.
Oh yeah.
And I'm like,
Shout out to Hoyt.
Yeah.
I mean, this is just this is the Hopeaholics, not a hunting podcast, but
Are you
Well,
gonna try
yeah,
to shoot
go-
a bear with one? Yeah, like that.
No.
Can Haynes
Yeah.
does bears.
he does. He recommended my first bow to be a bear, but we're just not there yet. I'm like terrified of bears, and you got to crawl before you can walk. So we're still crawling.
This year I bought the bow with the commitment, like before walking into the store. I was like, all right, dude, if you're gonna go buy a bow, you're not gonna take that bow out for at least a year. And that's not like, oh yeah, half-ass year.
Sure.
That's a year where you're putting time on the bow at least 3 days a week.
Yeah,
Where you
reps.
are just comfortable with that thing.
Totally.
And when you go out, you're not like, oh, am I going to hit this thing?
You're
so.
super. Yeah.
I think a year is probably the minimum amount of time, like focused,
I think
to be able to go for it.
I think so. A full, like, committed and dialed and doing the reps and the practice and all the things. But wait, let's circle back into like, okay, chef, restaurant, to even becoming sober, all of the things. We want to know it all. So
Sure.
how did your journey into actually realizing that you had a problem to begin with?
So I'll just bring it back. I mean, I grew up in New York City and kind of in the, you know, the center of it all, really. You know, when I was born in 1980. And I didn't really experience much of New York City in the 80s because I was a little kid.
Mm-hmm.
But I had a pretty rough and tumble household. My father he was mentally ill, physically ill, and incredibly violent and aggressive and abusive. And, you know, we lived in a small apartment, you know, 600 square foot apartment. And my father was unfortunately, as his mental illness evolved, he became a hoarder. So it was like really difficult in the apartment. And as I got older, you know, I mean, the violence didn't really start until I was probably 11 or so with my dad, but like the verbal and the fear that I had for him started really young. And so that kind of propelled me to want to become an escape artist, like little Houdini, every opportunity I could. And so escaping for me started with really going to friends' houses and sleeping over. And I remember pretty clearly there was this kid, Ross Delafield, who I grew up with, who was like kind of one of my best friends in the early elementary school. And he invited me over to his house, and I stayed for dinner. And his family sat around a table to eat dinner together. And my family had never done that. I'd never sat around a table to have dinner. And I was like, oh my gosh, this feels like the TV shows. You know what I mean? I was like, this actually happens. And I was like, I really like this. And I have to be able to convince Ross's parents to like me. Like I've got to figure out how to make them like me so I can be here as often as possible. And that's kind of where my manipulation began in my life. That's when I knew that I was like having that thought. I didn't know it at the time, of course, but now reflecting back on it, like that is where my master manipulation skill set started in trying to make my friends' parents really like me. So I would chameleon myself into these situations to really have the ability to progress and get what I wanted, you know? And so because my mother was a secretary, my father was basically on permanent disability and totally just not interested in being a part of anything. My mom worked until 7 every night, and I was put into after-school programs. And so sport was like what I did. And I was kind of just like this natural athlete. And I dove deep into sports in New York City, which is, you know, there's not like crazy sports programs there, right? Like you're not playing football in New York City. But, you know, I got into street hockey. I got into soccer. But I really excelled at hockey. And I was always kind of the young kid. And I always went to the park, like, you know, as often as I could to play, which was almost every day, into the dark, you know, and as it got dark. And those kids were really up to no good, you know, even though we all played hockey together and it was a thing, like they were just up to no good. So I was kind of influenced by these older kids, and I was probably like 10, 11. And things just got worse and worse in my house. And so before I met drugs and alcohol, I met suicidal ideation, you know, and like I would think about it, but I just didn't have the balls to like do anything until one day where I was 12, and my father and I got into a pretty bad battle, and I was like, that's it, I'm going to show this, you know. Can I curse on this thing?
Yeah.
Okay. I was just like, I'm going to show him how badly he's hurting me. And I grabbed a scissor and I said, you know, come into my bedroom. You want to be like, you know, I was like, fuck you, come into my bedroom. And he came into the bedroom, and right in front of him, I just went, boom.
Oh, shit.
Boom, and I just sliced my wrists open. And I think for me, it wasn't like I want to die. For me, it was, I just want this man to hug me. I want this guy to see how bad he has made me feel about myself, so much so that I'm like ready to just call it quits. And I don't think my father had, and I'll talk about later. I mean, I've had some crazy experiences with my father after he died, but I don't think my father had the tools to understand that. Like, I think he just came over and just kicked the shit out of me. And so I went to school the next day. They saw that I had, you know, I didn't go deep enough to kill myself, but they saw that I had, you know, bandages around my wrists. And I was already in with the social workers at this point, you know. And so they were like, what happened? And I was like, if I tell them, I know it's going to get bad, you know. But I was just like, fuck it, I'm just going to tell them. I was like, I cut my wrist last night in front of my father, and he kicked the shit out of me. And they immediately called child services. And so child services got involved, and, you know, they showed up in my house, and my sister and I were sharing a bedroom in super tight quarters. I was 12, she was 13. And child services were like, this can't happen. These kids at this age can't, you know, of opposite sex can't share a small, tiny bedroom like this. And so my mother and father were like, all right, well, we're going to put you on the couch. And I was like, I mean, I barely sleep here anyway. Like, I'm happy to tell the child services that, but you can kind of kiss me goodbye at this point, you know? And that's when I had smoked weed for the first time. And when I did that, I was like, oh my God, this is it. I don't need to hide in hockey. I don't need to go anywhere. I figured it out. I licked it. I figured it out. I'm just going to stay high all the time. Mm-hmm. And very quickly, that weed escalated to psychedelics. Psychedelics escalated to crystal meth. And by the time I was 14 years old, I was a full-fledged addict. And it wasn't like any one specific thing. It was everything. Anything. I was not afraid. You know, I was just not afraid. And at this point, every time I was home, my father and I would get into a brutal fist fight for the most part. And I had basically resignated that, like, I hated this man and I don't give a fuck, and they can't do anything to keep me down. Like, I don't remember saying I'm going to rebel, but it was basically just like, you have no idea what you guys created, you know? And my mother, who I love and I know loves me, she was a loving woman, but she was abused. She was diagnosed with something called abused wife syndrome, because my father was very abusive towards her as well. She wasn't able to cope. She literally told me that she thought he was going to kill her if she left. And so it just got real ugly. And at 15 years old, we got into another banger, and the neighbor called the cops. The cop shows up, and child services, anytime the cops were called to my house, child services were right behind them. And child services, you know, my mother had found I was selling drugs at that point. My mother found a bunch of drugs in my bedroom. And my father used that as an excuse when the cops showed up to say, take that fucking kid away. He's a drug addict. He's a drug dealer. He's a criminal. Like, get him out of this house. Get him out. We want him out. And my mother was crying. I was crying. Child services were like, if you don't take this kid out of here or have him leave, we're taking him to foster care now. And I heard that. And I was like, foster care in my head. I was like, you know, this is going to be a catch me if you can kind of situation. Like, I'm out. I'm done. Like, I'm not dealing with this. And that was it. You know, I like packed my shit and I just left, and I never moved back in. And I was just like this crazy New York City street kid, you know, like if you've ever seen that movie Kids, like that was kind of like what it was like for me. And I got into a lot of trouble, and the kind of party drugs very quickly became just alcohol and cocaine, and then alcohol and crack. And then when that got really dark, I introduced pills. And when I was like 19 years old, I was living in an apartment in Lower East Side, and I was in over my head with the amount of, you know, drugs I was moving and selling. And these guys came into my apartment, put a gun in my mouth, duct tape, pistol whipped me, threw me in the bathtub, you know, duct tape my mouth, duct tape my arms, my feet. And it was 3 dudes, and I was like, that's it. These dudes are gonna murk me. Like, I was like, you know, because there were 2 safes that were bolted into the ground in the apartment in 2 different closets. And they were like, give us the combinations to the safes. And I just knew that if they got into those safes, I was dead anyway, you know, because there was just too much product in there for me to come back from. And the guys who owned the product were just not guys, you know, I wanted to really fuck with. Mm-hmm. And, you know, so I wasn't giving them the combination to the safe, and I was like, this is gonna go down in a really bad way. But then I just had this thought, and I was like, it's a Friday afternoon at 4:00. Like, these guys aren't gonna shoot me, you know? And then luckily my roommate like came into the apartment, and within 30 seconds they had him yoked up, but at that point I think they were just scared and they kind of just like they beat it. But that was just a moment for me where I was like, oh my God, I really got to move out of this neighborhood. You know what I mean?
Things aren't looking good.
Yeah, I was like, I got to move out of this neighborhood. I wasn't like, oh my God, like, what are you, like, this, you created this, Mike. You know, like, you created this. This is your fucking problem. And so that didn't stop me. So I moved to LA. I was like, all right, I'm going to move to LA, you know, and I'm going to try to get my shit together in LA. I went to one AA meeting out here, locked eyes with this girl in the AA meeting, and her and I were just off to the races, you know, and I got into a lot of trouble here in LA. You know, I just like really.
Was this like 20? Were you 20 yet?
I was 19, 20. Yeah.
Is this like 1999 as well?
99.
Wow.
Yeah, 99.
What about your sister during all of this?
So interestingly, my sister witnessed all this. My sister took some of the heat, but very little in comparison to me. Like my father was not nice, you know, but he did not, like, he never raised a hand to my sister, you know. My father took a lot of his anger out on me, you know. Interestingly, I'm in therapy, and I'm starting EMDR therapy.
Oh, okay.
And it's hard because I feel like I've disassociated a lot from those days in my life, even from a young kid. Like I have like, you know, little blanks and blaps of memory, but not clear. And so the therapist was like, let's try to recall like a really, 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 really bad moment in your life, and let's bring it back. And I was able to pull off a few of them. And then she asked me the same question after. I was like, I'm just having a hard time. Like, I just can't like lock into a specific memory. Outside of like the time that the cops came and the child services came, and I remember being on the floor, like with my head in my hands. And I was like, would you mind if we call my sister to just get her on here and see if she can remember some of this stuff? And interestingly enough, my sister disassociated too. She can't remember a lot, you know. She was like, I know that he was very rarely home, and when he was home, it was all chaos. It was all hell broke loose, and my father and him would just battle. But anyway, moved to LA, and you know, I wrecked a motorcycle, wrecked 2 cars, just was not good for me. Came back to New York for Christmas, and my father died on that trip.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he was young, and he was just an unhealthy dude, and he died on Christmas Eve. He had a massive seizure, and we took him to the hospital, and he never came out. And so that for me was like just the most epic excuse to just go absolute ham. And I never went back to LA. I literally left. I mean, it wasn't anything fancy, but I had a Honda CRV. I left the Honda. I left my shit, my clothes. I just did not come back. You know, I just did not come back. And at that point, I was only sleeping on couches anyway. So,
how old were you at that time?
20.
Okay.
Yeah, I was 20.
So you lost your dad at 20.
Yeah. And so at that point, I was back in New York. I began to get very violent, and I began to get like the anger, like it had sort of come to a tipping point for me where I just really, it was like I hated myself so much. I couldn't get out. I knew I had a problem. I knew about sobriety, but I didn't know it was possible for me. I just didn't think it was possible for me because I'm this unique motherfucker, right? Like just
Terminally,
totally.
Terminally unique, right?
yeah, like it's not. It can't help me.
Yeah.
You don't know what I've been through.
Yeah, you got no idea.
Yeah, you have no clue.
So I just took it to the next level. You know, I took it to the next level, and I was hanging out with a lot of bad kids, and I was going on runs for days, and I was just fully transparent. Like, my piss was brown, my shit was water. I hadn't taken a solid shit in fucking years. Like, literally, I remember saying to myself, I'd be like, I can't even believe, like, my body is just rotting.
Yeah.
I was tiptoeing around my apartment when nobody was home, you know, just.
Crack still your drug of choice at this time?
Yeah. So it was, I mean, it was really everything, but like, you know, we started cooking it, And then I got to a point where I was just like, well, I'm gonna fucking waste my time with this shit. I'm just gonna start buying it. And there was a kid named Jumanji in the city, and he would show up and he had, 20 crack rocks in between his lips and his teeth. And, I would just be like, give them all to me, And somehow, some way, I had always had a job in a restaurant. Like, I kept a job in a restaurant because my superhuman power in life is connecting with human beings. Like that is, and I know that today, like that is my strength. I am deeply passionate about this, what we're doing right here.
Sure.
This is it for me. I could do this shit all day. And I never knew that was like a skill set, but come to find out now that like it really is, And so in the restaurant world, I had that. And, everybody knew that I was like, Mikey, the bartender, who was just like, you want to party, you come see this dude, And anyway, long story short, I got into pills, and then those pills turned into heroin. And I shacked up with this really beautiful woman who was also into heroin. And we were in her not in her apartment. I mean, we were in her boyfriend's apartment, and
shacked up with the girl.
Yeah.
That's what he said.
Yep.
And we were in her boyfriend's apartment, and we were using pretty much only heroin at that point. And I remember kind of sitting on the edge of the bed. I was kind of like sitting on the edge of the bed like this, and I was naked, and there was a mirror on the headboard. And I was like sitting there, and I was so high, and I looked over to the right, and I saw my reflection in the mirror. And from my head to my toes, my skin was white like your shirt, like white like paper.
Yep.
And I was like, oh my God, whoa, that's scary. Like, I've never experienced that. Like, I looked down at my arms and I was like, oh my God, like my tattoos were like so bright because everything was white, and there was no blood on the surface of my skin. And I got terrified, and I like jumped up and I stood up, and then boom, face down, like out. And I OD'd.
Oh shit.
Yeah, I OD'd, and I remember kind of like coming to and being like, I don't want to say her name, but I was like, hey, call the ambulance, I'm dying. And she was terrified. So she didn't want to call the ambulance because she's like, oh my God, this dude's going to die in the house, like this is my boyfriend's house. Like, I'm sure all the shit was going through her mind. So she dragged me into the bathroom, and she put me in the bathtub on my back, and turned on the cold water. And the cold water, I can feel it now, like the cold water hitting me in the chest from the shower. And she told me that I was in there for like 20 minutes. I mean, it felt like 20 years, because I guess I died, and was like at the very, very edge of life. And eventually didn't die and came to. And she slowly helped me get back into that bed, and I got under the covers, and my body was convulsing. But after about 3 hours, I felt okay, and I feel I'm so lucky, that didn't take me out. If I was using today like I was using then, I would have been dead. Like with fentanyl, I mean, it's
Gone.
Yeah. No, there's no chance. I had no chance.
For sure.
No chance. So anyway, I remember leaving that apartment, and it was still like early evening, and it was late July of 2004. And I remember walking west on 13th Street from Avenue B, and I said, dude, you've done it. Like, you are at the bottom of the barrel. Like, you hate your life. You have so much to offer, and this is what you've done. You just fucking died. You have to put a stop to this. You have to figure out a way. It has to happen. Today's the fucking day. Like, you gotta just change. And then 4 hours later, I was using, and I just couldn't do it. I didn't know. I just couldn't do it. And that's when I kind of made a decision where I was like, okay, this is how I'm gonna die. Let's like make it go quick, and that 2 weeks before I got sober was like very scary, very scary. I got 86 from every single bar. south of Houston, north of Delancey, east of Allen, and west of Essex. So I was going into bars wanting to kill people, you know, and fighting all the just crazy person, you know, because I went from, it wasn't like, okay, I'm just using heroin now. It was just like, I'm going to do everything, you know, and I was drinking and I was smoking crack and meth and heroin and pills. And it was just like, it was just, you know, crazy. Anyway, it was not like any other, you know, there was nothing like special about this night, but it was a Monday morning and we were on my rooftop in the East Village. I was with 2 dudes who I typically would run with, and we were probably up for 48 hours or so. And they were like, all right, Mike, we're calling it, man. It's over. We're going home. And I was like, peace. You know, I'm not, you know, I'm still, you know, I've got drugs and I've got, you know, like probably warm beer, warm vodka in my room. And I went downstairs to my apartment, and I remember closing my bedroom door and locking it, and there was a wall mirror right behind my bedroom door. And it was a mirror experience again, you know. And I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror, and I just like walked over to the mirror for some reason, and I made eye contact with myself. And I can't remember ever doing that. You know, I do that a lot now. It's like a powerful thing to do. But at that point, I don't remember ever doing that. And I made eye contact with myself, and I was just like, I fucking hate you. You should jump. You should just, like, you've been trying to end it. Like, you live on the 6th floor. Like, you should just fucking do it, dude. And then I blacked out. You know, I blacked out, and I woke up 16 hours later. I slept through work, and I told I called my boss, and I was like, I'm so sorry, Frank. And he was like, Mikey, come down to the restaurant. You know, and I went down, and they were like, look, man, everybody knows you're dying. Like, everybody. You know, I mean, you're not doing a good job of keeping it a secret anymore. And I can't have you here, man. Like, and my job was the only thing that was like tethering me to life, you know? And he was like, I just can't have you here. Like, you got to get your shit together. You're young, you know, you've got a long life ahead of you, but the way you're going, you know, it's going to end soon and bad. And I don't want to do it on my watch. So I got to go. And I literally started crying, and I begged him for my job. And I was like, please, you know, I'll do anything. It's the one thing that I have. And he was like, look, man, if you get sober, you can come to the restaurant at 8:00 in the morning, and you can clean with the porters. If I find out you have a single drink or a single drug, you're out, and I'll find out, you know, because at that point I wasn't good at hiding it, you know. And that was it. It was the last day I drank. Wow. And I made a phone call to a friend who was like an older sister to me, who used to take me in, you know, in my teens when I was really strung out, and she would just, you know, let me crash on her couch. And she would always tell me, I didn't know that she was sober, but she would always tell me, like, there's a way out of this. You know, I know you're young, but there's a way out of this. And I called her. I called Karen. And then she introduced me to her boyfriend, who I had never met, but he was like 10 years older than me, covered in tattoos, sober as fuck, and like living this dope life. And I just didn't know that was a real thing. Like, I just thought, you know, I was like, all right, I'm going to get sober and my life is going to suck. Mm-hmm. You know, like, I'm so used to living this fast paced, like just totally, you know, just gnarly life where nothing good happened. Like, nothing good happened. And for some weird reason, I had an ego about it, you know, like deeply insecure, but this like puffed up, like so much so that I, you know, had no problem just punching people in the face, you know. And so this dude showed up, and he listened to me. He didn't say a fucking word. He was just like, just talk to me, man. And this tough dude, I'm like, this guy wants to hear me talk to him about my shit. And I sat and I spoke to him. He listened to me for like 4 hours, and I'm sure I lied my ass off about everything in my life. You know, I'm sure I told him all sorts of weird shit. But he was like, listen, dude, I'm not going to chase you. I know that I can help you. I'm going to write this thing for you, and I suggest you take the suggestions. You know, I suggest you dive into this thing, because if you do, I promise with all my heart, guarantee that in not a short period, and not a long period of time, you're going to feel not only different, but good. And I was like, all right, tell me what to do, man. You know, he was like, I want you to wake up as early as you can in the morning. And as soon as you get up, I want you to turn around and make your bed. As soon as you make your bed, I want you to go into the bathroom, take a piss, wash your face, brush your teeth, and actually put on your contact lenses, because I was known to like not wear my contacts and be walking around fucking blind. You know, like putting on my contacts or like taking them out before bed was like a big deal for me. And then he goes, as soon as you're done with that, I want you to drop down on your knees and ask God for help. And I don't give a shit if you believe in God, you don't believe in God, call it universe, call it whatever you want. But the brass tacks is you don't know how to ask for help, because your decision making has gotten you here with me. So I want you to start asking for help first thing in the morning. And all you have to know is you're not it. That's it. And then right when you're done with that, I want you to put on a pair of sneakers and get out of your house. And I want you to take a walk or take a jog. If you can, take a walk. It could be a block. It could be 5 blocks. It could be 10 miles. But I just want you to move your body right away. And then when you get home, I want you to make yourself a bowl of oatmeal, a big, fat bowl of oatmeal. And you can add whatever you want to it. You can make it taste any way you want. But oatmeal is easy, it's accessible, it's inexpensive, you can make it taste good, and it's healthy. And you need to start putting wins into your body as opposed to putting losses into your body, which is what you've been doing. So I'm going to give you that like nutritional win in the morning. And then right when you're done with that, you're going to head to this meeting, and you're going to sit in the front row, and you're going to introduce yourself, and you're going to tell them why you're there. And that sounds like this. My name is Michael Chernow. I'm an alcoholic, and you know, and that was basically it. And then he said, and then after you do that, you're not going to say a fucking word. You're just going to sit and listen, and you're going to grin and bear through it. And then when you're done with that, you're going to meet me at the Muay Thai gym. And I'm going to teach you about discipline and humility and commitment. And he said, I'm going to teach you how to be a man. And I'm also going to teach you how to get back up no matter what. And so we're going to train for 2 hours there. And then right when we're done with training, you're going to eat chicken and broccoli. And you can get it from the Chinese store, the Chinese restaurant. You can get it from, you know, eventually you'll start cooking it yourself. But like chicken and broccoli is what I want you to eat for lunch. And then you're going to take a nap. You're going to go to work and have chicken and broccoli again. And
that sounds like my diet.
Yeah. Have chicken and broccoli again and go to bed as early as possible. And right before you get into bed, you're going to drop down on your knees and you're going to say, thank you for keeping me sober. And rinse and repeat. That's your life.
You weren't allowed any rice with that broccoli?
No. No, he was just like chicken and broccoli.
Chicken broccoli.
And so, you know, that was the beginning of my journey. And very quickly, for whatever reason, I locked in on Muay Thai. And I'm sure it had something to do with the fact that I really, you know, that was like a comfortable thing for me to, you know, get into because of what I was doing in the street.
Yeah.
And within 90 days, you know, I had such a good community around me. I feel blessed. You know, I really had I had a couple of angels, Marcus and Gavin, these two guys that just sort of like came to the rescue. They were like, all right, dude, we're going to wing this kid. And my life changed, you know. And
How old were you right there?
23.
23.
Yeah, I was 23.
Have you been sober ever since?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So I just celebrated 20 years on August 2nd.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
Did you have us both on the camera or what the fuck, man? Like what?
Oh my gosh, that was crazy.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
We obviously do a shit ton of podcasts.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was good.
Yeah,
that was like a double.
That was not bad. That was not bad.
And perfect unison, too.
I know,
like
right? We're going to have to do a replay on that one.
Yeah, you might have to. Is there any way you can make that happen? That's a good reel.
That's hilarious. That's good for you. No slips, no falls, nothing?
No.
Wow.
Yeah, and honestly, so like anybody who's listening, right? Like I think the crux of the situation is that there's not like maybe a solution. There is a fucking solution. Amen. There is an absolute solution. Like if you're stuck right now and you're like you think that you're this one, you know, like unique snowflake that just fucking, all the sober people are just like, they're the lucky ones. Like, I'm just here to tell you, anybody who's listening to this that's struggling, like, you can get out. Like, the beauty of this thing is, like, how you're feeling right now, you don't ever have to feel that way again. And I know that to be true. Mm-hmm. You guys know that to be true, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I just didn't think that it was possible for me. And then I had structure and I had community. And then the piece that I think is so crucial. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter how old you are, what gender you are, how far gone you are, you got to find a fitness component. Like,
mind, body, soul.
We're all about that part too. Yeah.
It saved and saves my life.
I will say this part about the fitness component, because what happened with me is I got sober at 22 the first time. I had a few slips and falls. I really got into fitness, I forgot about the emotional getting rid of the baggage part. I did steps 1, 2, and 3. Thought I was good. I didn't need to do that step 4 and 5 for
6,
me.
7, or 8, or 9, 10, 11, 12.
Yeah.
1, 2, and 3. I'm good.
It's the 1, 2, 3 step.
Yeah.
Process. I remember working out, and my house manager at the sober living I was at, he was like, you're just working on the body, dude. That's all you're doing. He's like, and you know what? He was right. And I stumbled and I fell a few times, but thank God for the rooms, man. Thank God that I stayed sober the first time for 3 years. And what I learned from that experience was that there was a different way to live. And when I went out, the misery was refunded in full. The first few times I didn't stay out that long, and then I got sober and did the same damn thing and did it for 9 years. Built a life beyond my wildest dream during that 9 years, and then slipped and fell, and I almost didn't make it back. Like, God is not done with me, and had, like you said, had fentanyl been out, I would have been donezo. I'm primarily a meth addict, but I like Valium. And if Valium's not around, I'll take any benzo. And if any benzo's not around, I'll do a shot of heroin. But like you can't even find heroin out here in California. Everything's fentanyl. And if I wanted to buy a Valium or any benzo off the street, it ain't going to be a Valium. It's going to be fentanyl. It's going to look like Valium. It's not going to be Valium.
Well, I'll put it this way. All of my friends from my using days are either sober
or dead.
Yeah.
All of them.
Yeah.
All of them.
Yeah.
There's no one floating. Like, they're all sober or dead.
What about you? What about your boss that gave you the really nudge?
He's definitely not sober. But somehow that guy's been able to like manage his life. Like he parties, but he never took it to the levels that I did. I love that man.
For sure.
I'm forever indebted to him.
Do you still have contact with him at all?
Oh yeah, totally. So nice. Here's the funny part, right? So I get sober and I dive deep into this Muay Thai thing, right? And I'm at this point, and then 8 months into sobriety. So I move. So the first 3 months, I'm like, holy shit! Like, my life changes quick, right? Like, my body adapts. I feel good. I'm like, oh my God! Like, I'm getting fucking jacked.
Yep.
Like, this is crazy. And it just gave me this confidence, right? And so I'm like, I'm moving to LA again. I'm gonna go chase this acting thing. And everybody was like, dude, be easy, bro.
Yeah.
Be easy. And I was like, I got this. Moved to LA, and it rained for like 90 days straight in LA. And I was lonely as fuck. I remember I was at a meeting at I think it was Log Cabin or something like that.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And there was this dude there that was like some famous person's son who just had like a real, he just rubbed me the wrong way. And I started to feel that kid, that couldn't control his temper show up. And he like walked towards me, and it was a packed house. And then he just stopped in front of me and just turned his back and stood right with his back right in my face. and I just went off, and it was not good. And I left. I walked out of there, and this dude Jimmy came after me, and I had never met this dude, but he was like, "Yo, dude, it's okay. Everybody hates that dude. Like, it's all right. Don't beat yourself up, man. You know." And he's one of my greatest friends today.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, every time I'm in LA, we smoke a cigar together. I love that dude.
Jimmy or the actor guy?
Jimmy. No, the actor guy. I might still knock that dude out. But
do you know who he is? That guy?
Yeah. Nice. Anyway, I moved back to New York with my tail between
Yeah,
my
how
legs.
long were you here for?
3 months.
Okay.
In and out. I was like, all right,
90
I'm
days,
outta
and you're
here.
like, yeah, I'm out.
But it was a blessing. The one thing that happened to me while I was here that I'm grateful for is, I started running because this dude told me I gotta run every day. So I was running every morning, and I was living in Los Feliz, but I would drive to the beach and I would run along the beach every morning. And then I do this 5-mile run, and I get back into my car, immediately light a cigarette.
Oh, that was that was me.
Yeah, immediately. I'm
Nuts.
like, boom, go
Nuts.
for a long run.
She's still vaping while she runs right now. She'll be
I
pulling
have
it out her
no, I'm
pocket.
not. No, I'm not.
Well, I mean, I'm a
Hater.
Zenster.
Huh?
But
You guys are still addicted to nicotine?
unfortunately, I'm not smoking, but I'm
I have
on
the
the
patch.
Zen.
Me
I'm
too.
on
What do you mean the
Zen.
patch? You have Zen or Zinton.
That is definitely my downfall.
It's the isn't it
Pouches?
Pouches, yeah.
Yep.
I
I'm
love
thinking
the Zen.
about. I'm. You know what? I'm
Vaping,
going
no.
back to vaping.
Nope.
Don't go back to vaping.
Nope.
Do Zen. At least
Yeah.
it's at
And
least
at
it's not
least
putting
it's
shit.
just nicotine and not all.
There's no
That's what I
tobacco.
told
It's you know what I and
doesn't
this is
cause
my addict.
cancer?
Like I justify it. I'm like,
Yeah, me too.
it's like the thing
Me
I
too.
do. You know,
I'm like,
Does
it
it
helps
cause
you focus.
cancer, Emily?
Like
Totally.
I'm
about to put one in my mouth. But anyway, so I remember after a good long run, I run from basically Windward Circle all the way out to I forgot what it was, but it was a deep run. I mean, I put in 8-9 miles. And for me at those days, that was a deep run.
Yeah.
And I get back and I light a cigarette and I'm like, man, my fucking chest. And I was like, one last drag. That's it. Done.
That was it.
Quit. That was it. And so LA allowed me to quit smoking cigarettes. I have not.
Oh,
Well, that's not true. I've had a few cigarettes since then, but I don't smoke cigarettes.
Right.
And then I moved back to New York and I got a job at Frank Restaurant again. Frank took me right back in. And one night I'm bartending and this girl walks in the bar with another really beautiful girl and these two dudes. And it was a really happening spot that I worked at. And so there was always beautiful girls, but there was just something about this girl. I was like, oh my gosh. I mean, way beyond my pay grade, no chance. But I was just beautiful, you know? And so they walk in, they sit down at the bar, they have a couple drinks, and then they go into the restaurant to eat. And an hour later, the dudes leave. And 15 minutes later, Donna and Linda come sit down at the bar.
Donna and Linda, that's my wife's name and her sister's name.
Crazy.
What's your wife's name, Donna?
Donna.
So is mine.
Yeah. I thought I heard you say
Yeah,
that
me too.
at the
I was
very
gonna say
beginning.
something, but then I didn't want to derail.
Yeah, I didn't either.
Well, I spilled the beans on this, but already. But so they're sitting at the bar and
How old are you at the time?
24.
Okay.
24.
So a year in to
Just
sobriety.
under a year.
Okay.
Just under a year. It was so I know the exact date because it's 2 days before her birthday. It's April 23rd, 2005. And
That's the date that you laid eyes on
Yeah.
your wife?
mhm. Yep. Yep.
Yeah, that's amazing.
So she's there and they're hanging out and they're being flirty. And I'm like, is this happening right now? Is this? I mean, I'm telling you, when my wife she's unbelievably beautiful. And I'm so grateful that I still get that. I'm with my wife 20 fucking years.
Wow.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And she's so beautiful and she's my angel. She's Anyway, we're talking and I'm like, and so they're there for 2-3 hours and they're getting pretty tipsy, you know?
Yeah.
And she's like, yeah, it's my birthday in a couple of days. And I'm like, all right, that's it. I got it.
Yep.
I'm like, I'm going for it.
Yep.
I'm like, I'm taking you out for your birthday. And she looks at me and she goes, do you honestly think that I don't have plans for my birthday? And I was like,
savage.
yeah, I was like, well, what are you doing tomorrow night? And she's like, I'm not sure yet. I was like, all right, well, I'm not working. Let me take you out at 10 o'clock and we'll go to my favorite restaurant and I'm going to get you the best chocolate cake in New York at midnight. So I'll be able to celebrate your birthday with you. And she was like, clever.
Clutch.
You know, she was like, all right, let's do it. And I picked her up the next day and we had the most amazing date. And then she straight ghosted me for a couple of weeks. Nothing, not a peep, not a word, just, and I was like, damn, I knew it was too good.
Yeah.
And then 2 weeks later, she texted me and she was like, hey, I'm at this restaurant. If you're around, come by. And that was that, you know,
You're
came,
like,
yeah, I'm like, out. But yeah, she, you know, so that happened.
Did
right?
she play that one on purpose like that, the 2 weeks kind of thing?
Did she?
Yeah.
No,
you
that
guys ever
dude,
talk?
yeah,
one
she
of the
probably
dudes,
was breaking it off with her.
Yeah.
And was like,
Oh, she was with
yeah.
that dude?
she was with one of those dudes.
Oh,
I mean, it
okay.
wasn't her
Like,
boyfriend,
right.
but they were seeing each other
Yeah,
for a few
yeah.
months, you know?
Yeah.
And so but you know, it was interesting because when we met, when we started dating, you know, I told her I was so at this point fixated on Muay Thai kickboxing. Like it became my life.
Mm-hmm.
I was convinced I was going to be a professional kickboxer. Like that was how much I took it. Like I was just in it and I wanted to do it. I loved it. I loved getting my ass kicked. You know, I really did. And like, I learned so much in the rings of Muay Thai, like so much. And I told her, I was like, look, you know, my life right now is sobriety, 2 meetings a day, training for 2 to 3 hours a day, and work. And like, I need to do that because I've got a lot of shit, you know? And so if you can hang with that, I'm like...
When did you tell her this? First date?
No.
Second date?
No.
No, you wait a little bit after.
Yeah.
Jesus
I waited
Christ.
a little bit. Like once I felt like this was like getting somewhere, I was like, okay.
Let me
like,
lay it all out.
Yeah, like not only is she beautiful, not only is she like one of the coolest people, like I want to spend time with her all the time.
Yeah.
And it was mutual, right? And I was like, okay, this could go somewhere. I still couldn't believe it because like, you know, she's fucking 3 inches taller than me and, you know, just like traveling around the world.
Hear that, Emily?
Emily, it's possible.
Hear that? There's two shorter guys sitting in the room right now with tall women. Huh? Don't put your sights so high. Look down a little bit, Emily. Look down a little bit. All right? Us short guys, you know, we
something about
oh my
it.
God.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So she, you know, but I was still like, okay, you know, I just want to be real with her, you know, because I'm just vulnerable and I'm just like, I'm like basically addicted to training, you know, which you know, people will say, you know, like, you just replaced an addiction. And I'm like, listen, I would much rather be addicted to kickboxing than addicted to like smoking crack and like trying to hook up with your girlfriend. You know what I mean?
And getting again possibly put in my mouth every other week.
Right.
So pick your poison.
Yeah. So she was like, I'm in, you know, I got patience and that was that. And so, you know, I went all in with her, you know, and my sponsor, I told my sponsor and I'm like, dude, I met the woman of my dreams. Like I am fucking in love with this girl. Like this is like probably 6 or 8 weeks in maybe.
Yeah.
And my sponsor was like, slow it down, my dude. Like you went to LA, you thought you knew everything. you came back, you know, you meet a girl. Yeah, she's beautiful, but like, you know, you don't know what you know. You don't know what you think you know.
Yeah.
And I was like, I hear you, but I'm not listening.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I was like, I'm going all in here. And I called my grandfather like 3 months in. So another funny story, you know, like once you get into the program, like you become spiritual and all sorts of things start happening. All sorts of stories happen, you know. But I started seeing 11:11 like every single day, morning and night. I just started seeing it. And I started after like probably 2 weeks of seeing it every day. I was like, all right, this is weird. Like and I had never seen that number before, like noticing that I was seeing it. So I started seeing it, and then basically for like 2 months straight, I saw it every single day, and I started writing about it in my 10-step. And I was like, I'm seeing the fucking 11:11. Like I'm seeing the fucking 11:11. And then I basically told Donna, like, I was like, look, you know, you might think this is weird, but I was like, I've been seeing this 1111, and I just know it has something to do with you. And I was like, I'm not getting a tattoo of you, but I'm putting 1111 across my whole fucking stomach.
Oh my God.
And she was like, what do you mean? And I was like, well, I just know that, like, this is something special. And, you know, and so she came with me, and I just got my stomach blasted, you know, with this 1111. And that's kind of when I knew that I was like, all right.
Such addict behavior.
Totally.
I
You know what's
love
fun?
it.
You know what's funny?
Like
though?
legit.
Totally.
A lot of the
Such-
stuff, a lot of the
such
stuff
of our
he's talking
bullshit.
about is I can really relate.
Yeah.
to. 1111 is the number that I see all the time, and I literally screenshot it all the time and send it to my wife and tell her to make a wish.
So I've been making the exact same wish on 11/11 since the day, probably like the day I got it tattooed on me. And I've never said that wish to anybody. Nobody knows what that wish is, but I say it every single time. And if I'm just being real here, that wish has come true over and over and over and over and over again. It's weird. But so, you know, I'm deeply into the Muay Thai, and then I go out to Thailand, and I'm training
wow.
Muay Thai in Thailand, and I'm fucking
Yeah.
fighting
All
with these
in.
dudes.
Yeah.
And so that was 10 years, right, of my life.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Like, oh wow.
Deep
okay.
into it.
Yeah.
And
Are you married at this point?
so at 3 months, when I told my grandfather, hey, I'm in love with this girl, and I think I want to marry her, you know. And he was like, whoa, buddy. You know, like,
Slow down.
and I was like, well, you know, give me some advice. Like, what do I do? You know, I didn't have I had no blueprint.
Yeah,
you know,
of course.
there was not like, I couldn't look back at my parents and be like, oh, that's a healthy relationship.
Yeah.
So my grandfather was like, do you live with her? And I was like, well, she kind of sleeps in my apartment every night. He's like, nah. He's like, get an apartment with her. And if you feel the same way you do right now in a year, you got my blessing. Like, go for it, you know? And, so that night, I was like, hey, babe, like, you've got a little apartment on Thompson Street. I've got this shitty apartment here with roommates. Like, let's get an apartment together. And we did. And a year later, or 11 months later, actually, I called up my grandfather, and I'm like, dude, I love this woman more than anything on the planet. Like, I really do. And I'm ready, you know? And he was like, go for it, dude. And so I asked her to marry me that summer. And we got married a year later, and she's my fucking best friend, and you know, I love her with every cell in my body to the end of days. And so all these amazing things started happening in my life. You know, like I kind of call it the 3 C's. You know, commitment is like the hardest part of this sobriety thing, right? Like, but what I started to understand was that addicts or alcoholics in action, active alcoholics, nobody can kind of draw this correlation unless you've been there, but you are the most committed, dedicated, loyal motherfucker on the planet. Like, you will do anything. You will rob, you will steal, you will commit crime, you will cross everyone and anyone and do other funky shit to get that next one. Anything. You are willing and ready to just do anything it takes to get what you want. Now, you strip away the drugs and the alcohol, that loyalty, that commitment, that dedication, that like honor to the thing that you want still is there. You know how to do that, right? And so not all alcoholics that get sober are able to channel that in a positive way, but definitely a lot of them, right? Like, there are a lot of like unbelievably successful people in recovery.
Yes.
Like, unbelievably doing extraordinary things. So I just like, I kind of clicked in on that, not knowing that was a thing, but I just figured out that like the commitment piece is the hardest part, but I'm good at committing. And then what I learned about commitment is like, you do the same thing over and over again, day in and day out, you build confidence, right? Like, commitment breeds confidence. And you can look at it and say, oh, you know, you eat the same breakfast, you eat the same lunch, you eat the same dinner, you train, you go to the gym, you know, you go to bed at the same time, you wake up at the same time. Like, some people would be like, that's kind of boring, that's kind of robotic. And I'm like, no, I get better and better every fucking time. Like it is not the same. Like it is different. Like every time I reflect back, doing the same exact thing, I'm like, there's growth here. There's growth here. There's growth here. Anybody who's great at anything is a commitment assassin. Mm-hmm. Anybody, because that's what it takes. So commitment breeds confidence. Confidence ultimately breeds courage, you know? And like, you know, they write books about people with courage, right? Like courage is like the difference between the good and the great. You know, it's just like how willing are you to believe in yourself? And I learned all of that in Muay Thai and in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. Like I really did, you know, and I owe my life to it, right? And so when I was 25 or 26, I decided I was going to go back to school. And I went to school to learn to, you know, get my chef's culinary degree. And while I was there, Cornell was putting together a program with my culinary school for the restaurant management program that they have at Cornell, which is the best hospitality program in the country, arguably in the world. And at that point, I kind of knew that I was going to be in the restaurant world, and I kind of had this dream that I was going to have my own joint. And so I did both of those programs, and I graduated when I was 28. And I was still working at Frank Restaurant.
Wow.
At that point I was married, and I was like, oh, the next step, I'm going to do this thing. I'm going to open up a restaurant, you know? And I had like no fear about it, which was weird.
And by the way, for anyone that's listening, being in the restaurant business and owning your own restaurant is like, I think 5% even last in their like first year or something like that.
Yeah. 90% die within the first, 12 months. And so I came up with this idea, and I wrote a business plan about it. I called it the Meatball Shop, and I put a business plan in front of every single regular that came into that restaurant, and it was a super regular spot. And these dudes and gals have seen me go from this crazy 20-year-old kid to dark 23-year-old kid to getting his shit together to getting married to going back to school. So I was there for 8 years, you know, and these people would come in there 2, 3, 4 times a week.
Yeah.
And they watched me turn into this person. And 14 of them wrote me a check for $25,000 each.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. So they funded my first restaurant. And I opened up a restaurant right in the neighborhood that I caused the most trouble in, right in the center of the Lower East Side. And small little joint, called the Meatball Shop, and we sold meatballs and sides. You know, like that was our thing. And we fucking crushed it. It was crazy. Like we thought we were going to do like about $1 million in our first year, and we did $4 million. Wow. We paid back our investors in 6 months. And one of those investors was like, okay, you guys are onto something. He was like, my bank account's your bank account. Go for it. Like, and you want to open up 5, 10 more of these things, like I commit. And Daniel and I looked at each other and we were like, oh shit, this is real, right? Like we were cooking meatballs on Jay Leno, Jimmy Fallon, Chelsea
Oh my
Handler.
gosh.
I mean, Good Morning America multiple times, the Today Show. Like it was nuts. It was nuts. And I'm just here to say, I'm not saying it for like
sure.
You know, I'm saying it like this shit is possible. This shit is possible from a dude who was seconds away from death through heroin and spent 10 years abusing my body and feeling like that I was useless and a piece of shit and no one's business. And, you know, to like this dude who like committed to just one fucking thing. I committed to one fucking thing a day at a time. And I was able to just build this thing. And so we opened up 5 more of these things over the next few years. And
all in New York? All
in New York. And then I wanted to like, I wanted to reap some of the benefits. And I put $20,000 of my own money into this thing. That was like all I had, you know. And I was like, I want to sell some of my equity so I can see if I can open up another one of these restaurants. And Daniel and I were kind of bumping heads on where to take it out of market. And, you know, we had a massive offer to buy the company, and it was going to change my life like in an unbelievably drastic way. And I couldn't convince him and the other guys to do it. So I was like, all right, let me go see if I can crank one of these things out solo. And so I sold equity, and I like that changed my life financially, right? Couldn't believe that happened, you know. And so then I said, fuck it, I've got like this confidence now, and I'm like, I'm gonna go out on my own and I'm gonna do another one. And I opened up a sustainable seafood spot called Seamore's. And I did the same thing. I opened it up, smashed it, and it was like New York Magazine, #1 restaurant in New York City for like 9 months in a row. And we, same thing, cooking fish tacos and doing all this shit on TV. And I got a TV show called Food Porn and traveled around the country and shot a lot of TV, shot like, just an ungodly amount of TV. And I took on a partner because the TV show was like taking a lot of my time. And so I was like, all right, I need a partner who understands how to scale restaurants.
Mm-hmm.
And so this dude, Jay Wainwright, he was leading this brand, Le Pen Quotidien. They got thousands of restaurants, and this guy opened up like himself with teams, of course, but he opened up over 1,000 restaurants. And he had fallen in love with Seamore's, and he was like, I'm in. If you want someone to scale this thing with you, I'm in. So I brought him on as my partner, and 4 years in, I told him, I was like, hey, like if we can build this thing to 5 to 6 restaurants, I'd probably want to sell some equity and go create another one, because I love that part of it. I love the creative part of it. I love kicking indoors,
Yeah.
I don't love being the day-to-day guy, following up with people and being a project manager. I'm the worst project manager. And so, I sold equity there, but like all the while I went from like, for me, why I also said in the beginning, like how important fitness was in my life, like it was 10 years of Muay Thai. And then I got into endurance running, and I was running these crazy long races. And then someone said to me in 2018, hey, have you ever thought about bodybuilding? And I'm like, bodybuilding? I'm like, I'm 160 pounds. Like, what are you talking about? Like, and they were like, well, you kind of got a frame for it. Like, you should try men's physique bodybuilding. And she was a bikini bodybuilder. And she put the seed in my head, and I went home that night, and I like hired a coach, and for the next 5 years, I just dove into it, and I ended up getting my pro card and competing as a pro. And my wife thought I was crazy. My business partner was like, "You are a psycho," and I was just like, "I'm just doing the next right thing, like I'm just doing what I think is right, for my life." And I needed to chase after those things. And anyway, 2019, I sold a bunch of equity at Seamore's, and the pandemic hit right after I did that. And so I got really lucky timing wise there. This is all because I'm sober, by the way.
Yeah.
Like there is nothing available in my life. Zero. Like not a damn thing. Not a wife, not kids, not fitness, not business, not anything without sobriety. Just would not be possible, And so anyway, 5 years ago, I had to make a decision because the pandemic hit. Yep. And no one was going to restaurants, right? Totally. And I kind of looked at it and I was like, holy shit, like my career is over.
Yeah.
Like who knows how long this is going to last. People were dying by the hundreds of thousands, and it's like, oh my God, this is a real thing. And all the restaurants in New York were shut down. Mm-hmm. So I had to think about what I was going to do. And I knew that my true passion was aligned with this idea of wellness. Like I just knew that like being in restaurants all the time is something that I loved. I felt like I was good at, but really for the next chapter of my life, if I have an opportunity to step out of this like hardcore grind business, if I can get out of this business and create another avenue for myself to be able to have dinner with my family every night and breakfast with them and like be able to like, in that first year of the pandemic, like I was like so close with my family. Like we moved into this house upstate. And anyway, I was like, what am I going to do? And I went on this crazy long run, and I was like, oh my God, this is it. I like came up with the whole thing on the run. I've been eating this oatmeal every morning. Those guys told me to do it.
Yeah.
And I've been adding all sorts of different shit to it. And I was like, man, if I can figure out how to get my oatmeal concoction into a pouch, this is what's fueled my body. Like there is nothing more authentic to me than the thing that I start my day with every single day, this positive nutritional win that just gave me confidence, that just gave me this bump of like, I guess like, it's at that point for me, it was like I was getting dopamine hits from like doing the good things. Mm-hmm. And I was like, man, if I can figure out how to get this shit into a pouch, not only do I have a business that I can just authentically stand behind because I know this has fueled me and I love it and I look forward to it every day, but I'll be able to tell my story in a real way. It was harder for me to tell this story in the world of restaurants.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like being a restaurateur in New York City, nobody wants to hear about your sobriety story.
No.
Nobody wants to hear about like, your fucking God
Yeah.
shit.
Yeah.
They're like, dude, just give me a
I just
meatball and a
need to
fish
eat,
taco.
man.
Shut
Yeah.
the fuck up.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Hungry right now.
Yeah.
And so I was like, man, if I can combine these two things, like my passion for wellness and my passion for nutrition and fitness and sobriety and food, like I think I can do something special. And that was that. I came home. I told my wife what I was going to do. I was like, babe, I'm starting this oatmeal brand. She was like, what? I was like, I'm doing it. I just got this feeling. And so I came up with the name Kreatures of Habit. And I'm a creature of habit to the T. Like I find something that works that I like, I am doing it. I'm doing it forever. Like that plan that those dudes wrote me, I'm still doing it. My life is not, there's been awesome shit in my life, but like my life has not strayed far from that plan, that structured plan. So I opened up a bank account, I put some money into it, and I spent a year working on getting this oatmeal concoction put together. And after a year, I did it. And I knew nothing about this business. But I'm an alcoholic. If I say I'm going to do it, I'm going to fucking do it. And that's what I'd like anybody listening. Like, I know this might sound corny, but I'm just telling you, like, without drugs and alcohol in my system, I am capable of doing anything I want to do. Anything. Like, I believe that. I really do. And so I did it, and I came up with the brand Kreatures of Habit. The product is called Meal One. I got everything I wanted to get into it. It's this overnight oatmeal with 30 grams of protein and chia seeds, flax seeds, pumpkin seeds, vitamin D3, probiotic, digestive enzymes. It's so easy to make, and it's like this full satiating meal. And I just put this cool like in your face brand on it, and I pitched it to Gary Vee.
Oh my God.
And I was like, Gary, I just came up with this idea, and I got this oatmeal, and I got this cool little apparel line that I'm going to launch with it, this little capsule collection. And I had no idea what he was going to say, but he was like, whoa. He was like, that's Kith meets Quaker. Let's fucking go. And he wrote the first check, and then he brought in a bunch of people.
Wow.
And, God has been so good to me. Like, God has just shown up in so many ways in my life, like, he's just shown up. He's just shown up, And, so, I just celebrated we just did 3 years. We're 3 years in, and we've got this oatmeal, and it's kicking ass. And we have this sleep support hot chocolate without melatonin. So it's like this really delicious, like cup of hot chocolate that helps you relax and, get ready for bed. We got a protein bar coming out next, and I'm able to really do the thing that I wanted to do, which was basically have a product that I really stand behind that will allow me to tell my story.
Totally.
And so last year I started I partnered with a charity organization, and we raised a whole bunch of money in this event called We'll Wear the Weight. And we partnered with this foundation called Release Recovery. And they've got really amazing, deep connections with treatment facilities around the country where they're able to get these sponsorships where, a treatment facility would charge 40 or 50 grand for a month. They're getting it for a freaking big discount. And so I connected with Zach, and I was like, hey, I'm gonna use my platform to try to get addicts and alcoholics that are struggling who want treatment into treatment. I want to pay for everything. And he was like, let's go. So I created this event where we all wore weight vests. I did a custom weight vest with GoRuck. GoRuck got behind it, and a whole bunch of people showed up to New York, and we rucked all of the bridges from Brooklyn to Manhattan, 3 bridges, and we did this ruck, and we raised a shit ton of money. And I was able to get people off the street, and we paid for their whole entire experience. I'm still paying for some of their outpatient stuff, and they're all sober. It's crazy. They're all still sober, And so we just finished in October. We had the second annual one, and we're gonna do it all over again. And I'll go on I've also kind of like, in the program, they're pretty, I think it's loosened up a little bit, but people used to give me shit.
Oh yeah.
About talking about my
Yeah.
sobriety, talking about.
In AA.
Yeah.
Yeah, they've loosened. I mean, they've loosened up.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
No one's saying that you're not a member.
So here, the truth of the matter is that we're allowed to talk about our sobriety as much as we want to talk about our sobriety. The tradition really just states that we don't represent Alcoholics Anonymous to the public.
Mm-hmm.
So like I'm not
Or
out
talk
here.
about people
I'm not out here
and-
saying, "Hey, I'm a member of Alcoholics Anonymous." Usually, I'll just say, I'm actually more of a member of Narcotics Anonymous, but just where I got sober. Actually, I would say clean if I was actually speaking correctly. But yeah, it's like we can recover out loud.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And your experience, you're talking about your own personal experience and what you do. You're a creature of habit, so those habits are having to be 12. So you know what I'm, or at least like that's how I looked at it at first too, because it was a big thing for. I had to talk. I talked to my sponsor before, like because she was getting flack from like old school because she's older than I am. So obviously her sponsor is older than her. So a lot of like the older.
Yo, quiet her down. Quiet.
Yeah. And so yeah, she's getting a little too loud over there. But now I look at it very, very differently. Where it's like, as long as like I'm not talking about people that I see in my meetings or anything that I go attend, and I'm not saying that I'm a member of any type of organization. I just say what I use, what I do.
I mean, I don't even know if there's a problem with you saying that you're a member. You know, there's so much interpretation, and I've worked the traditions, like you know, I know the traditions, but I'm not out here representing. When I'm on this microphone, I'm representing my own opinions.
Yeah,
and I'll be clear about that. These are not the opinions of Alcoholics Anonymous or Narcotics Anonymous. But if I continue being anonymous about my recovery, people won't know that recovery exists.
100%.
And in today's day and age, if I don't let them know, people will die.
Yeah.
Yep. Agreed.
I mean, I don't know if you know why this podcast exists. It exists because I lost my son-in-law to fentanyl.
I remember hearing that.
On 9/11 of 2022, you know, my 21-year-old, she's almost 24 now, but she at 21 years old, she found the love of her life dead from fentanyl. And
sorry about that, man.
Thank you. Yeah, I decided to, like, you know, God put it on my heart to be the voice for the people that have lost their lives, and then I started to see this movement across Instagram called Recover Out Loud, and I was like, dude, I'm down with that now. Like, I'm into that because I want people like you telling a story, man, of coming from nothing. Like my story's different, but I ended up homeless for like 5 years. And I've built a multi-million-dollar business since I've been, you know, in recovery. Like, I want people to know that you're capable of doing that you can live a life beyond anything I could have ever imagined.
So far beyond.
So far
And
there's
beyond.
a solution.
And I was the guy in
You're not
high
a
school.
unique unicorn.
No.
No.
No one is.
I mean, it's just.
We're all the same. Grew up differently, different stories.
Different. So I come from a really, my dad's a doctor and my mom's a nurse. And I ended up homeless. You know?
Shit doesn't discriminate.
Not
No.
at all. At all. Doesn't matter.
I
the
ended
thing.
up being a homeless drug dealer who was terrible at selling drugs because I did too many of them.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you know, I kind of made a decision too, where every time I share about my story, which now is a lot, the amount of DMs I get, the amount of people that are like, hey, you know, honestly, right on the car ride over here, I get a text message from a childhood friend. And he writes in the text, hey, you always told me to call you if it's getting real bad. It's gotten real bad. So I call him and I'm like, what's up? Like, where you at? And he couldn't even say a sentence. He was so fucking high and drunk. And so I was like, okay, you're calling me. Like, that's amazing. It's amazing, dude. I was like, be proud of the fact that you are on a call with me right now. I was like, and he had, he'd been in and out of treatment, and I was like, dude, he's like, I can't go to treatment. I was like, you don't need to go to treatment. I was like, you already been down that road. I was like, all I'm gonna ask you to do is let me help you get into a detox. Like, let me just help you get into a detox. Are you ready to go today? He's like, I'll do it. And I called up the people at Release Recovery. I'm like, yo, I need to get an old friend into detox. Boom. Things start happening. The next thing you know, they're picking him up tonight, Like, if I'm not vocal about my story, if I'm not out there just being like, hey, I am a living, breathing example of someone who has experienced a really, really dark place, did not think there was any light at the end of the tunnel, and there was no hope for me. I'm just here to say, if that's you right now, you're wrong. Like, you are wrong. Like, if you're listening right now and that's where you're at, I promise you with every cell in my body, all my heart, you're wrong. You're just wrong.
Well, and then what's so beautiful about it is, one, that they can look at your story and see how you started or even became sober really at a young age, 23, still sober now, and look at all of the beautiful things that you have done in your life, which is clearly, obviously I didn't know you then and just met you now, but those are two different people.
100%.
I mean, don't get me wrong, it's a daily reprieve, and that other person is still in there wanting to kill you every day. But you know the tools and you know how to combat that every single day to live the life beyond your wildest dreams. And look at the amount of times within your sobriety in the 20 years of continuous pivoting from like 10 years of
Muay Thai.
Muay Thai to then restaurant to going to school to being a chef. Like, what the fuck? And then all of a sudden married, you have kids, beautiful spouse, clearly, because we all know, like, having a partner that is willing to put up with our nonsense and also be supportive is huge. So shout out to her for allowing you to have those ideas and then, like, fuck, go run, do it, create it.
So supportive.
Super.
The only thing that I didn't talk about that I think is also important to mention is being a dad,
Yeah.
And I was so scared
Sure.
to have kids. I was so scared because, you hear the story, right? Like,
Generational curse.
yeah, like, I'm gonna, I don't know what to do. Am I going to understand how to love these kids? Like, is that something that's possible for me? I know now through some deep work that I've done that all the decisions that I've made, good and bad, have been subconsciously in an attempt to get my father to love me. All of them.
Sure.
Yeah.
All the decisions.
Yeah.
I wanted my father to just give me a hug and say, dude, I love you. And I was so scared. And I'm just here to say that, like, what I learned through the process of becoming a father, you don't have to be shown how to love. Like, you don't have to be shown. So, like, you can have this, like we are love kind of beings, you know what I mean? Like, we are all wired to
Totally
want to love and be loved. And it's a choice, and I've been blessed with these kids, like I have these two boys that are just, I love them. Like, I could feel the love. I love them so much. And, it's like, it's just a blessing, like, again, like, I would not have any of this shit. Nothing. I owe it all. I really do. And now, like, I did the work, I got to give myself credit, but the only thing that I know to be true is that, like, there's only one thing that I've got to do perfectly in my life. Only one thing. And that's just to get back up. That's the only thing. Because I'm going to fail. It's going to hurt.
Sure.
Life is painful. Life is hard, especially if you're trying to do hard things. And, my son's karate teacher said some really profound shit to a group of 5-year-old kids, you know, in karate. And this karate teacher who I've now become really good friends with, he started this karate school in pandemic in his basement of his house. And he had these like Japanese, you know, like posters on his wall in the karate studio. And he goes, "Hey guys, any of you guys know what these things say?" And they were all like, yeah, we know. They were like, "It says karate." And he was like, "No." He goes, "It says 7 down, 8 up." And one of the kids was like, "What do you mean 7 down, 8 up?" He goes, "You fall down 7 times, you get up 8. You fall down 10 times, you get up 11. You fall down 100 times, you get up 101. You fall down 5,000 times, you get up 5,001. And I was like, man, like that's it, you know? Like that's just it, right? Like this shit ain't, it's hard, but if all you know, if what you know, all I know is that like I can attempt anything as long as I'm willing to just get back up when I fail. Because I've failed so many times, you know, and
You know why you can get back up though?
tell me.
Your 3 C's. Because of all of those 3, it gives you the last one you mentioned, courage. And it's because you built all of those habits, the daily disciplines, the daily structure, the daily wins, from the oatmeal to the runs, to the working out, to the being in the gym with your first dude for 2 hours. Those are building that's the esteemable acts, which then gives you the confidence, which then gives you the courage to go in and press on and to get the fuck back up. Because like you said, for sure, and we've witnessed it amongst other people and then with ourselves, like when you're doing those things, you're creating a beast in a good way. Because then, you know, like the resilience that an addict has when it's put towards something positive, good luck stopping that.
Totally.
Because you're created a savage, and have fun with that.
Right.
Because they're a stud.
I mean, that's basically, I think, you nailed it. Like, I think that's it, right? Like, all you got to do is commit to that one thing, which is not drink and use drugs, and just know that you're going to fucking fail, and it's going to suck, and it's going to hurt, and there's going to be moments that, like, you just don't think there's a way out. But the only other thing I would say is patience and endurance are, like, you know, saving grace for me a lot of time.
Sure.
You know, where I just know, I'm like, yo, man, most people quit.
Oh yeah.
Most people quit.
He always says it all the time. Don't quit before the miracle happens.
Yeah.
Well, that's one of I have like 4 keys to success, especially like in business and in life. And I took the one from Alcoholics Anonymous, man. And I was sitting in a meeting in my early days back in the 1900s, the 1990s. You know, I went to really, it was like 1990.
It's true. It is the 1900s.
Yeah, I guess.
That's what my kids
I
say.
guess.
You know, I have kids, they call it the 1900s. None of my kids were born in the 1900s. They're all born in the 2000s.
Yeah.
But they always told you in Alcoholics Anonymous, don't leave 5 minutes before the miracle happens. So in business and in life, it's just a good life lesson to hold on to. Don't quit 5 minutes before the miracle happens. Most people in business quit right before that. If you just hold on a little bit longer.
Because it's hard.
But you got to be aware, right? You got to be like, you could be out of money, and that person the next day might be the person that you run into that is the guy that's going to take it to the next to the level for you.
I could not.
I mean, just like keep thinking about your story right now. Like, how in the hell do you get a hold of Gary V? You just call him up? No.
Well, it's probably from all the relationships. You being in the restaurant business, Gary V's in New York. You were 8 years in the game as a bartender at Frank's. Then you went to school, culinary. Then you have a business plan. Then you're sitting in front of some, I'm sure, heavy hitters, because I'm not writing you a check for $25K sitting at your bar, you know? So you're talking to these people that are regulars. They see this guy. You don't think word gets out. And Gary V's obviously, you know, running and gunning in New York for a long time in that, like, realm.
I'll tell you how.
It's nuts.
Straight up courage.
That too.
Like, Can I just take a quick run to the bathroom?
Oh my God, yeah.
2 seconds.
For sure.
I want to tell that story. Though,
Yeah.
it's a good one. Those are amazing dogs.
This one will eat you.
Yeah.
It's only. All right.
So anyway, can we go right back in?
Back from the pee break.
Yeah. So Gary, he in 2017 or 18, he launched a wine brand called Empathy Wines. And I had a couple of mutual friends, with him, but I had never met him before.
Because he started in the restaurant business, right?
He started in the wine business.
Wine or something.
His dad had a wine store in Jersey.
Yeah.
Okay, but in that realm of like
Yeah.
restaurant /
Food and beverage.
Yes,
Yep,
food and beverage.
Totally. He became like a wine
Yeah.
expert. Anyway, he launched this wine brand called Empathy Wines, the first like direct-to-consumer wine business. And when he launched that, I was like, I'm gonna get into his head here. I'm gonna do, I had 12 restaurants in New York at that point. And I was like, I DM'd him. I was like, hey,
Yeah,
man.
let me shoot my shot.
Yeah, I was like, hey, dude, like, I got 12 restaurants in New York City. I don't know if you've heard of them, Meatball Shop and Seamore's. I don't think you're selling wine at any restaurants, but I would love to be the guy to like launch Empathy Wines in the restaurant world in New York City. And the dude got right back, and he was like coming to the office. And so I sat down with him, and he was like, well, what's your story, dude? And I gave him my story, and he was like, hey, Nick, get the podcast studio set up. And we went right into Ask Gary V podcast right there, boom, right on the spot. And he put me on the podcast right away. And I sold a shit ton of wine for the dude. And that's when, and so when I knew that I had this brand in a business that I just did not have any idea how to operate in, but I was just like, I had this sort of like, this like no matter what kind of mindset, like I'm just going to do it because I know I want to do it, and I'm going to learn as I go. And I've been winging it to date, I'm fucking winging this thing, like I'm just winging it. I am, and I think if you ask most entrepreneurs,
I think everybody.
we're all winging it.
Yeah.
I'm still winging it 22 years later.
Yeah. Winging it.
Totally.
And so, that's how I met Gary.
That's incredible. That's an incredible story.
I have to tell you.
I love that.
Something I really like Gary V. But I have to tell you a funny story because like we just got like invited down to the Aspire tour by Tim Story one day, and because he was on, and because they just wanted her down at the Aspire tour, so it was like, hell yeah, I'm coming. Backstage VIP, all this cool stuff, right? And it's a cool tour and everything. But Gary V was the last speaker or second to the last speaker. Second to the last speaker. And man, of all the speakers, of all the stuff, the fluffy stuff that all the speakers do, he was so cool and calm, and he walked onto the stage and he had one hand in his pocket like this and just talked. And then a little bit later, he just walked over to this side of the stage and just kept on talking. No, nothing flashy, no flash, but was the best of all of them by far.
Yeah, he is.
I was like glued the whole time.
He is not only a good friend at this point, and like my biggest supporter, but the dude is exactly the dude that he says he is. And sometimes people are like, oh, he's a little too much, and I'm like, you can hate on a guy that just speaks his mind and like takes a chance at everything that comes out of his mouth. The dude is just taking a risk. He's just taking a chance. He's like, this is what I believe it if you want. This is how I see it, and fuck the bullshit. Stop caring what other people think.
Completely, and go balls to the wall.
Yeah. And I love him for that. And I don't ask a lot of him, because I just know how busy the dude is.
Sure.
But I'm here to tell you, anytime and every time I have, he's shown up. And
that's probably why he shows up too, is because you're not annoying. Like asking stuff, because a lot of the times people will ask certain individuals like a Gary V who you know, can offer a lot, whether it's mentorship or financial gain or helping in some type of aspect, partnering, whatever it may be, and you're wasting his time. Time is money, and time is everything that is.
Time is actually more valuable than money.
Totally.
And time is money when it comes to guys that are like making money on the second to minute realm. But also, you're right. Time is more valuable, or money. No, what? Time is more valuable than money. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's why he answers you, is because you don't hit him with the nonsense.
I think so.
I think so.
Yeah. Yeah. And I also think that, like, you know, I also am just like also down to just be real.
Yeah.
You know, like I don't
pussyfoot around
I
what
just don't
it is.
sugarcoat shit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Like, what do you need? What do you need help on? Say it how it is.
Quick, boom, boom.
Communication is key in every relationship, whether it's business or your marriage, a friendship. If you're able to use your words and say what you really need or what you really feeling or what you really want, whoever you're talking to is going to understand that crystal clear.
Yeah, and one other thing that I would also just say, like a really interesting tactic for getting into the ears of people that you want to get in front of, like, just because you want to do something, like if you're like, hey, how can I get close to this person, or how can I get on this person's radar? You know, you can call up somebody and be like, hey, like, you know, I'll work for free, like whatever, which is cool. Like I support that. But just know that, like, you're not helping that person by doing that, because now that person has to work to figure out what to do with you. You know what I mean?
Are you bringing any type of value?
Yeah, like, what are you bringing to the table, right? Like, I would say a different thing that you could do is try to find something that person does where you know it requires work on their behalf to pull off what they're trying to do. And literally put together a whole plan. And I know this sounds like a lot, but like this is in my opinion, do the work for them.
For sure.
And show up with that work already done and be like, hey, I noticed that this was something that you do, and I just wanted to propose this idea. I spent this much time. I figured this thing out for you. Let me execute this thing that I've already done for you. You don't have to put any thought into it. I've already figured this thing out. And that person is more likely to say, wow, this person is actually like an executor. You know, there's like, I have Walker tattooed on my hand. You know, people are like, oh, what is that, your dog's name? I'm like, no, I'm a fucking Walker. Like, I got it real close. Like, I see it all the time. You know, like, talk is bullshit, right? Like, you know, walking is what actually gets you from point A to point B, you know, and so when you can show that you're a walker, you know, like, strategists are great, you know what I'm saying? But like, you need people to execute on strategy. You know what I mean? Like, it takes more time to just, like, if somebody hands you like an idea,
cool, now
you
I
know,
have to read it.
Yeah, like, it's like, you know, there's got to be, you know, in hiring for my company, like, this is, you know, we're doing well, but we're still a very small little company. And, you know, when I interview people, if they even say the word strategy, I'm like, not gonna work. Like, you just gotta, like, you know, I need people to roll up their sleeves, because you better.
I'm an executor.
Yeah, like, that's it. I am a sniper. Like, I want you to say I'm a sniper.
Sniper, I like that.
I'm a sniper. You know, like, go into an interview, and I'm not saying be cocky,
Of course.
but walk in and just say, hey, I'm a sniper. I'm going to quietly and efficiently get the job done for you. I'm not going to ask for resources. I'm going to do the job quietly and efficiently.
Yeah, I wish people, sorry to cut you off. I just was like thinking when he said that, because like, that's how I've always been when I walk into a company. I've gotten jobs, right? And I got a job, and then I would always quietly work my way to the top, because I showed up on time, early, worked late, Never asked for overtime, never asked for anything. I just worked because that's what the program taught me to do. And then the next thing you know, I was, an owner of, Hope by the Sea. And then it's like all you can do is execute. You've got to get into action. And I feel like a lot of time that's what's missing a bit,
especially in the younger generation.
In the younger generation,
Yeah.
is that you don't get in my generation, you don't get paid until you've more than provided your value to that people. A lot of times people come in, they want the value for I'll work harder if you give me more money. That's just it's not. And if anybody ever says that, it's just not true. You will not. You will work as hard as you work, period, whether you're getting paid $5 an hour or $50 an hour. Your work ethic is your worth ethic, not based on the amount of money you make per hour.
Right. And also, what I like to say is if I'm interviewing somebody for a role and they're like, yeah, this is what I need to make, my response back is, okay, you want to make $200,000 a year? I'll pay you $500. Show me how you're going to make that money. Show me how you are going to pay for your salary at the company. Because I'll pay you $1 million. Show me how you're going to pay for yourself.
Yep.
I can't lose money on you. So if you're not prepared with a response,
Sure.
okay, this is exactly what I'm going to do. This is exactly how I'm going to pay for my salary plus. Because if you can show any smart business owner that is interviewing for like a relatively higher position, you're having these conversations, $150,000, $200,000. And I'm like, damn, that's a lot of dough. But I'm happy to pay for it all day, Like I'm learning about the direct to consumer packaged goods business for the first time, right?
Sure.
And people are like, okay, you should try podcasts. Like you should,
Sure.
You should try to advertise on podcasts. And I'm like, all right, let me figure, I'm going to sort of test the waters and see how it goes, and like to advertise on like Andrew Huberman or something like that.
Sure.
I think it's a $55,000 ad read.
For one?
For one. And
damn, Huberman,
Yeah.
you making that long dough.
yeah, I think it's something like that. And I
Holy
would imagine that Rogan's in the same kind of.
Oh, for sure.
Maybe even more.
Seeding. Oh, no, for sure.
I feel like if you did advertise on Rogan, one, you might have to spend a bit, but man, the return on investment.
So that's what I'm
Yeah.
saying.
Really
That's what I'm
good.
saying.
Yeah.
Like that. So these people can warrant that because, at first you're like, damn, that's a lot
Sure.
of money to have a guy or a gal read something
Yeah.
from a piece of paper.
Mm-hmm.
But if that money returns itself 10x,
Well, that's the
I'll
thing.
do it all
That's the
day.
thing. I mean,
The return.
I'll do it. Like I'll spend $1 million to make $2 million. Like if I know, I'll spend $1 million on a 2x return.
Easy.
I mean, I'd be
Like,
stupid.
why
I would be
wouldn't- why
stupid
wouldn't
not
you?
to, right?
Right. Like, why
But-
wouldn't you? But like, I think it's scary when you think, oh my gosh,
Well,
like,
what if you do pay that $50,000 to
And get
Joe
negative.
Rogan and you get zero?
and that can happen too. And I experienced that.
Sure.
I got some not, the greatest advice, and I was told to like, yeah, you got to do, if you're going to get into the podcast, you really got to test. You really got to
Yeah.
test. You got to do comedy. You got to do news. You got to do entertainment. You got to do wellness. You got to
Sure.
do fitness. And and I learned, right? Like, I think with podcasts, for the most part, you really want to advertise on a podcast that has a super targeted audience, right? Like the Mind Pump guys.
Oh, super great one.
Those dudes, they had me on the show. I hit it off with them really
Yeah.
well. They love the product.
Mm-hmm.
They are like massive consumers of Meal One. And after that show, they were like, all right, dude, we're investing in the business. Like, boom, just like that.
Wow.
And I was like, wow, that's crazy. And so then I was like, well, I'm going to give that money right back to you. I was like, you invest it, great. Here it is right back. You got your equity plus the money back. let's go on an advertising sort of run with you guys. And my God, like at first I was scared about spending that kind of money.
Yeah.
But my God, was that an amazing decision to make? Like
Sure.
those guys, the return on that was just incredible. You know, there's a woman that has been a supporter of ours from day one. And she was the co-founder and CEO of the Whole30.
Oh, okay.
And her name is Melissa. And early on, this really great advisor I had was like, you should just send Melissa some stuff, you know?
Smart.
And we did. And Melissa, like, she loved it. She called it her favorite CPG product of 2022. And I was like, wow. And like, I didn't, you know, she did that just on the strong arm. She just like did it. And like things just went, wow. And I was like, wow. And so I connected with her and I was like, hey, like, and she was like, yeah, you know, it's going to cost this much dough.
Sure.
And in early days, I was like, phew, that's like, you know, and my God, was it like, it was like the greatest investment, you know, because, you know, you think about, I mean, it's just, I don't know. It's a gambling game, you know?
It is.
Like, I just know in the restaurant industry, it's a really hard business, but there's only one thing you got to do well. You got to do as close to perfect as possible. And it's simple. The guest has to be just a little bit happier on the way out than they were on the way in. And that's what I told the team. So I'm like, guys, here's the deal. All we got to do is make sure that every person that walks out the door is just a little bit happier than when they walk in.
And that's with customer service, right? And then hopefully you have a decent food product and, you know, a little bit of alcohol sometimes for, you know, the people that do drink. With me, you don't need the alcohol. With me, just be nice. Like, I'll go to a place that has shittier food that has great, because the people know my name.
Yep.
They like me.
That's it. That's it.
Customer
and it's,
service.
you know, and I've had partners in the world of restaurants and people that worked on the team, you know, and it's, you know, it's a tough margin game, you know what I mean? Like, hard to make money. And so they lead with the money. They lead with the P&Ls and they lead with the spreadsheets. And I'm like, hey guys, here's the deal. Like, I'm a dummy. I'm not afraid to say it. Like, you put me in front of a spreadsheet, you ask me to build out a model, I'm just going to look you point blank and I'm like, I'm not the guy. Like, it'll take me 2 weeks to do what you can do in 2 days or 2 hours. Like, it's just a straight up truth. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just not that guy.
Got to fucking YouTube the damn
Yeah.
how to work the Google worksheet, all that.
So, you know, but I said to these guys that are just like, you know, he's got to work on paper. And I just know in my heart, like, yo, man, on paper, I'm supposed to be dead. On paper, I'm supposed to be a violent, aggressive father. On paper, I'm supposed to be an abusive husband. On paper, I'm not supposed to have the life that I have. So I know that paper, you know,
It's just a piece of
it's just a
paper
piece
that
of
you
fucking
can throw in
paper.
the trash.
And so I would say to these guys, I'd be like, hey man, let me just put it into perspective for you. You lead with the money and you put fear in the staff about the money. If you think for 1 second that a guest has ever walked in the door of this restaurant and looked around and was like, man, I wonder what the P&L looks like in this place. I'm like, that never happened once. That never happened one time. I promise you, no one has ever thought that. I wonder what the balance sheet is in here. Like, I'm so curious. Like, that's never going to dictate somebody's experience. Lead with the experience. And I think this is where a lot of restaurants fail because it's hard to make money. But if you put all of the energy, not into the customers or the guests, you put all the energy into the team, you know? And I used to use this analogy too. I was like, hey man, do you think that like in the locker room of the Kansas City Chiefs, before they go out onto the field, the head coach is like, all right, guys, we got to make the fans happy. It's all about the fans. I don't give a fuck what you do. All you got to do is just make them happy. Hell no. They don't talk about the fans. They're like, you guys are the best. We are going to go out there and crush. We are going to kill it. We are going to mop the floor with that team. And those guys come out and they perform. And guess what? the fans are on their feet. I did the same thing in the restaurant. I thought of myself as a head coach, and I'd be like, you guys are the fucking best. You guys are everything. We go out there, we are going to give it to them as good as we can. We are going to give them the greatest experience, period. Because you guys are the ticket. You guys are the tool. And that's when I learned that the team is by far and away, the customer is not first. They're just not. Because if the team is fired up and the team is stoked, the customer is just going to be on their feet, standing ovation every time. They're just going to be, yes. They're going to tell all their friends, man, I went to this restaurant. This person sat down next to, they sat down at the table. They sat down and started talking to us. He put his hand on my shoulder. Like, they were so kind and they were so invested. They knew the menu. That's what it is, And I think you can apply that to any business.
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah, customer service. That becomes customer service because of how the team is. If the team's happy, then it just trickles down from there.
Mm-hmm.
Totally.
I definitely have never been a fear monger. I would rather like command respect than demand respect. And commanding respect means that you're giving respect to everybody.
Totally.
Yeah, man, that's been a really good podcast.
I love
Crushed it. Where do we find where do we find this product? This is direct to consumer?
Yeah, it's direct to consumer, so it's only on our website.
Yeah.
Until we launch Amazon, which is coming up here soon, but it's kreaturesofhabit.com with a K, and it's a simple product, but it literally covers all the bases. I think a lot of people struggle with getting protein in the morning, and
sure.
if you're not prioritizing protein in your nutrition, like
especially women,
should be throwing this stuff out to to all of my clients that are in rehab.
Swimming super easy. Like, I can't wait to get my hands on it.
Well, I'm gonna send you guys a whole bunch.
Yeah.
But yeah, so kreaturesofhabit.com, at Kreatures of Habit on all the interwebs, all the social medias, and then at Michael Chernow is kind of where to follow me. And
yeah, I think I found you off of I think I saw you through Insta. Obviously was the platform, and it was, I think you were doing a talk and you were running, and I was like, I like this dude. I like this dude.
Is that how you came about?
I mean, that's how I knew of him.
Oh.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Shit works.
It
Put
does.
it out there.
It does.
Put it out
I
there.
mean, hey, the one thing that Gary Vee always says is content. The more content you put out, the more you're flooding the social media streams. Don't go back and look and see how many people have liked or commented on your shit. Because it doesn't matter.
Yeah. Joe Rogan says post and ghost.
Everybody's got a story. Everybody's got a story,
Totally.
I gotta go back and read my comments. They're all mostly addicts.
I mean, everybody does, regardless. Like, as much as like you try to stray, you're going to read your some of your comments, because sometimes the audience that you are posting to, you want to comment back to them as well. Yeah, and so we answer a lot of our own, like, especially on the Hopeaholics page, the boys do answer our DMs, because obviously it's a life or death what we're doing out here, as well as what you're doing as well. But you like combining the two, what you do on a daily basis, but also now you're combining your passion to make a living, but also it's what you do on a day-to-day basis, which I think is like the best of both worlds, and makes it authentic to your consumer as well, because you're actually like living what you're selling. Essentially.
Totally.
So with the post and ghost, it's like it's good because you can obviously get caught up in like mental health issues if you're being like cuckoo crazy about it, but also it's good to create a relationship with your community that you're also trying to reach.
Totally. I mean, I think community is everything, I mean, especially coming from the world of restaurants, like, it's hard to get people off their ass and into the store, right? It's just tough. And so, like, if you're not taking initiative to genuinely develop community in the restaurant, you kind of flop quick, you know. And so I've kind of tried to parlay that into Kreatures of Habit, and I was struggling to try to fill that, like try to find a way to do that in the brand, and then I figured it out. And I basically Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I sit down at my desk for 3 hours, and I open up my Shopify store, and I just start at the top of the orders, and I just call everyone. I just call them, and I'm like, hey, I'm the founder of the company, and I just want to thank you. I want to introduce myself. I want to thank you.
That's so smart.
Yeah, and you know, I've spoken to hundreds and hundreds of people, you know, and I've spoken to so many people.
And you know what that does? You receive that phone call, and you're like, oh my God. And then all of a sudden they get off the phone, and then immediately they call their friend or whatever, and they're like, Betty, can you believe this? Guess who just called me because I made a purchase? Unbelievable. This company's everything.
And that's what happens.
That's fire.
You know, and then on top of that, like, because that definitely happens. But on top of that, like, I get to hear their stories.
Sure.
You know what I mean? And like, you know, this is look, we all know that people have been eating oatmeal forever,
totally.
right? Like, so I'm not like
reinventing the wheel.
Yeah, I'm not reinventing the wheel here. I've just optimized it beyond anyone that's ever done it before. Like, it's really an optimized product. But I get to talk to like people in their 60s, you know, that are like, hey, I can't believe you're calling me. I want to just share with you, like, I started using Meal One a year ago. This is an actual story. I started using Meal One a year ago, and I was obese. And a guy that works at my job, a young guy who's fit, gave me a package of your oatmeal and just told me to eat it every day. And that was about a year ago. And I'm down to 180 pounds. The dude lost over 100 pounds.
Nice.
5'6", dude, in his 60s, lost 100 pounds. He told me his cholesterol was 240. His cholesterol is now 180 or 170, something crazy like that. He's off his statins, and
Wow.
he's just like, dude, he's like, you know, you changed my life, and I can't believe that you're calling me. And like, I hear stories like that, and I'm just like, my God, like, you know, you don't know what you don't know until you start getting out there and ask, you know. And so that's been the way that I've been able to bring the hospitality to the biz. And, you know, I speak to somebody that's you know, ordering oatmeal from this thing, and now I've got them for life. You know what I mean?
For life.
In like a real way. It's not, you know, at first my partner at the company was like, dude, what are you doing? He's like, you're going to spend time calling customers? Like, you think that's a good use of your time? And I was like, I think that's the best use of my time.
Super smart.
I think it's the best use of my time. You know, the name of the game is community, man. Like, what better way to build community than actually to ask them to show that you're interested in their life? You know, people want that. People want that, you know, so.
Because when they get off the phone, what do they feel? They feel better.
Totally.
And then the word of mouth is the best way to grow your community, grow your brand, and grow that loyalty to that brand. That when people are just shooting the shit and having a conversation and they're talking about whatever it may be, movies, things going on, that's a story that someone's going to tell.
And you know what's real crazy? All three of us at one point were absolutely out of our minds crazy and deep in the hole of drugs and alcohol.
Yeah.
Like that is crazy. Like, imagine, and I used to think about this sometimes in an AA meeting. I used to think about just like, imagine someone just walked in and flipped the switch, and everybody that's in this room right now that's super loving and caring and sharing about their lives all of a sudden got taken to the day before they got sober. What do you think would happen in that room, dude? You know, like
zoo animals.
Yeah, we're
messes.
We're lucky. We're so lucky.
We are lucky.
Blessed.
You know, we're the fortunate ones.
So lucky. So many people don't give it the amount of time. Like, you know, right before you think it's not working for you, I promise you, just get to bed sober. Just say, fuck it. I'm gonna get my head to the bed sober.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna do it. You know, like,
just one more day.
One more day. You're going on a long run for the first time. You're going on a long run. Like, I always think of myself when I'm like going for a long run and I'm tired of shit. I'm like, I'm running to that pole. All right, I get to that pole. I'm running to that pole. I get to that pole. I'm like, I'm running to that pole. It's the same shit with sobriety, right? It's just
Completely.
like, run to the next pole. It's all good. Just get to the next pole.
And if you're having a bad day, sometimes, especially early on in my sobriety, my brother, my oldest brother, he gave me this nugget. He's like, that's cool. Just root for midnight. That's it.
Root for midnight.
Mhm.
Yes. Yeah.
And then you're in a new day.
Yeah.
Totally.
But congratulations to you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Awesome,
it's
man.
really
This is
cool.
so much fun.
But
Yeah.
yeah, and your story is just another testament of the beautiful promises that do come true in an individual's life if they go ahead and get out of the driver's seat. Because once we start thinking that we ain't it, we are definitely not it at all.
We're not
So once you step that aside and you do the work that is required, obviously, look what can happen. It's a beautiful thing. So
Still can't believe it,
Yeah.
Still can't believe it.
Mm-hmm. Your
Well,
story is
thanks, man.
powerful.
Thanks for coming on.
Yeah,
Thanks
thank
for
you so
having me,
much.
guys.